Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending this webinar. What I'd like to do today is to show you some of the things that are possible rather than what you must do. All of you should recognize this template here. It's very simple. It's got two sheets, control and data, and it basically only has two parts to it. So the generate button, and in cell A6, the path where the XML file is going to be created. That's pretty much it. If we go to Vernon, in the object window, when you're trying to do cataloging, there's fields all over the place. There's 3 tabs just in this window alone, and then all these other ones that are ticked have some data for this record in it. And as you may well be aware, it's very tedious filling in a separate record for every item that you're cataloging, which can run into the hundreds. Unfortunately, you can't just copy and paste across fields easily. And the other thing, as I said, was where are all these fields? So one of the things I created about 5 years ago was a spreadsheet, which we use for cataloging. So this is one that has all the fields in it that the cataloger would want to use. If we look at these cells here, they've got validation applied to them so that a little message can pop up. If you've got somebody like a summer student or a volunteer, they can use this spreadsheet, and everywhere they click that's relevant, there'll be a little instruction. You'll also see that some of them have drop-down lists, so that's part of the validation for that cell. And other cells have validation applied so that if you try to put something stupid in, it'll stop you. You'll also see that we've got some conditional formatting here, which highlights wherever there's a double space or a leading space. So in this case, we've got a double space in between these two words. And here we've got a leading space. So we can use validation, conditional formatting, and of course, formulas to process the data for us. So where we've typed in a material type, for example, a lookup list and formula will put in the system ID for that particular material. And it means you don't have to know all of them in advance. They're all kept in a sheet here in little tables, which can be updated at any time. You can sort them by priority so that if gift is the most common thing, it comes to the top of the list and so on. We have a data sheet, and as you can see here, it's got some junk in it already. So once we've entered all our data in the data entry sheet, we can click on the copy data button, which has got a macro running behind it, and it fills it all out for us. So that's now ready to go, and we would then create an XML file for the Vernon import configuration to run. Now, if we pop back to Vernon, we have the basic import configuration file, which you're all familiar with. And we can create a master configuration file. So we don't have to create a new one for every catalog project that we do. Because the fields are the same, we can create a master that has all the fields we're going to want. And here are all the headers we got from our spreadsheet and the mapping. So once that's done, the only thing we'd ever want to do or ever need to do is perhaps add another element if there were 4 associated persons instead of 3. There's a nifty way of doing that through the get element headings from XML function here. The XML template looks like this, as again, you're aware, and I've said before. The thing with it is, though, that it's very basic, and there's a lot more we can do with it. And that's what I'm about to show you. So instead of something as basic as this, we could be doing something like this. So we've still got our generate button. You can shift it, but you can't edit it because it's locked. And we've got our A6 path, which the generate button is depending on, so we can't shift that. However, what we can do, instead of cutting and pasting or typing in there, is use a formula like this one, which picks up the information in this cell and this cell. And it means that if I want to change the file name, all I'd need to do would be to change it in here. And everything else updates. Got a little reminder here of what the config file ID is, in case I forget. So there's the formula. And then down here, this hyperlink will take us to the folder that this is going into. This next one is the log that Vernon generates when it's actually doing the importing. So when you press the import button, it'll start to parse the data, and that takes however long it takes, but then it'll generate an import log. Now, for most people, this won't matter, but for me, being just a little bit nerdy, I like to know when it started, where it's at. So this one's actually finished. I can then overwrite the name of the log for if I need to record it for some reason. And I can see the progress. So this one here started at 11:03. At 11:07, it was not very far through it. By 11:30, it was nearly finished. Yes, exciting, I know. In here, now most of you probably would have found out by now that if you have spaces in the headers of your data sheet, Vernon will automatically replace them with an underscore. So what we've been doing is not putting spaces in them in the first place, but occasionally one slips through, and this will highlight how many columns in your data sheet actually have a space in the header. Down here, this is hard-won experience, all this. This is things to check for before you do the import, because if any of it's wrong, Vernon will go, I don't recognize this, and wait for input. And if you've got a import happening overnight, then it's just going to wait till the next morning. So we've got a checklist where we can go through all the potential errors that we've identified and make sure they're okay. Over here, this is again not vitally important for the import, but does mean that I can get an idea of how long the import's going to take. So if I put in today's date and time and change that to a little while ago, that's the start of the import, and we get that from here. And then every so often I'll go in, see how many records have been updated, put in the date and the time. It tells me how long the import should take, when it should finish, and how many hours remaining. In this case, only a few minutes. And that changes depending on how many records have gone in. Again, nice. I use it quite a lot. It's up to you entirely. The instructions that come with the control sheet can be shifted out of the way or deleted once you know what you're doing. And you can see we've got one header which has got spaces in. And if we go to the data sheet, we can see conditional formatting has highlighted two headers for us. This one has got a space in it. And this one is not in the XML configuration file, but should be. So if we change that to no space and pop back here, we'll leave this one as it is for the moment, because the next thing I'd like to show you is the configuration checklist sheet. So this is where the rubber really hits the road. We've got warnings up the top here. So we can see, for example, here that we should have 42 headers in our configuration file, but only 40 of them are showing up, which is a worry. And we can see here too that if we want the system ID for record matching, it needs to be ticked. Now this whole black section here is basically a copy of the XML import configuration. So if we pop back to that, so it's all of this. This particular configuration is one that we created for doing general cataloging. And because the fields are always the same, we can just have this great big long list of them all and tick them or not as we need. If they're not ticked, Vernon just ignores them in our data sheet. We can also sort, of course. But it's a lot easier doing that in here. So we can sort by element. We can filter as well. So making sure we haven't got any replace. Well, we've got two of them. And that might be okay, but it still highlights them. So that's a copy of what's in the configuration file. This here shows us our headers in the data sheet, but it also highlights which ones aren't currently ticked in the configuration file. We may not want them to be, but this highlights which ones there are. You'll also notice that there's some missing ones, and that's highlighted here. So if we pop back to our data sheet and fix this, the conditional formatting goes away, and we now gained ourselves another header, but we're still not right. So where's the other one? We don't want this column at all. So like it says here, the pink cells may need an import tick. If you don't want to import them, you can leave them unticked. This will stay pink, but you can just ignore that. But again, it's highlighting a potential error. This here is because a lot of the time we're trying to match existing records. And so this will be bright red if the system ID is not ticked. If we change that to a 1, we're good to go. If you're creating new records, that'll be red, but that doesn't matter because you won't be using that column anyway. And in fact, it won't show up here because you won't have it in here. This section over here are, in this case, a formula to tell us how many times the table group is appearing. And in this case, there's 3 of them, but there should only be 2. So we need to find the other table group that's wrong. So in this sheet, we've got a pivot table, which shows us that table group number 2 has been assigned to those 3, but that one's actually wrong. So we can go back in here. And now we've only got the 2 we want. So what we need to do here is make sure everything's okay. That needs to be ticked. And so if we pop back to our sheet here, it's ticked here. So if we copy that, Control-Shift-C, and we do want the headers, and we paste it in here, you'll see it updates this whole section here and tells us where we're at with the configuration file. The other thing is these 2 fields here and here, if you remember, they are here and here. So we can just simply copy that, delete that, paste it in there. And what I like to do in here is have a record of what we're doing. So that's the 2nd of the 2nd, 23. Paste that in there. And then save that, and we're good to go.